RugbyRenegade.com, the #1 online strength and conditioning program for rugby. Are you ready to get bigger, stronger, fitter, and faster and dominate your opposition? Welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast, where we build machines.
Today's episode is sponsored by Optimum Nutrition. To get a 40% discount across their entire batch-tested range, use the code RENEGADE40 at www.onacademy.co.uk/elite portal. And of course, members of the Rugby Renegade online subscription program get an exclusive 50% discount plus free access to the Optimum Nutrition online nutrition course. Yes, welcome back to episode 71 of the Rugby Renegade Podcast. My name is Jamie Bain, and today I interview John Ashby, strength and conditioning coach with the Welsh Rugby Union and also experience with the British and Irish Lions as well. So it's great to pick his brains about life on tour with the Lions, and we go into depth about how they prepared for World Cups and the different training modalities they've used. So it's full of information if you want to hear about altitude training, warm weather training, repeated sprint ability, and actually see how they've looked at the research with their players in their environment, to prepare for a World Cup. It's really interesting. So give it a listen and let us know what you think. Hi, John. Welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. Great to have you on. So let's start by you telling us a little bit about your background, how you got into strength and conditioning, and who you've worked with.
Hi, Jamie. Thanks for inviting me on, mate. Really appreciate it. I started S&C back in 2007, really, where I did a placement year at London Wasps Rugby Club as part of my sandwich course, like most people have at Bath University. So that's what sort of I was always a rugby player, wanted to get into rugby. I realised I wasn't good enough. I wanted to stay in professional sport, so went to Wasps, and so that's when I realised I wanted to do S&C. I had a fantastic year then, learned a hell of a lot off the people that were there. So Paul Stridgen, who's actually gone full circle, is my boss at Wales now, Davis, some of the guys. And then did the usual thing, went back to uni, sort of walked into a job straight away, like most young kids do, and there wasn't anything around. So I got an offer from Wales to do a postgraduate internship with Craig White. He knew of me from Wasps, and I think he thought I did all right there. Luckily, so offered me to do an internship with the national team. So I did it with Wales during the international period, and then the Newport Dragons out of the international periods, and it was amazing, really. I got obviously really high exposure for international rugby with Wales. Then with the Dragons, I got a huge amount of responsibility during that placement year. So I then luckily got a job from that with Wales. So I was in the same position where I did it building up to the 2011 World Cup, where I did Wales for international periods, and then as an assistant conditioning coach, and then with the Dragons I was one of the strength conditioning coaches there outside the international period. And then went to the World Cup 2011. And after that, I got a full-time contract with Wales, which is the position that I've been since as one of the strength conditioning coaches for the national team.
Oh, awesome! And that's some good experiences there in terms of World Cups and things like that, which we'll talk about. So I kind of did a bit of research on stuff you've been involved with and stuff at your time with Wales, and I know you've worked under some great heads of S&Cs and been involved in some of what they've done and research. And one of the first things that came up was the research on repeated sprint ability in hypoxic conditions. Why don't you tell us a bit about what the setup was, what you found, and kind of how you'd use it moving forward?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'll start some guide documentary really called. I've been really lucky in my time to work with some amazing people, so I've learned a hell of a lot of things, luckily with the sort of position I've had. So obviously Craig White, who's now at Chicago Cubs, Dan Bauer is now at Wasps, so Paul Stridgen I've known for years, so he was my boss at Wasps, now he's my boss at Wales, and then the current guys there are Hugh Bennett, Ryan Chambers, John Williams. So I just wanted to mention them. You'll learn a hell of a lot from them, but I owe a great deal to all of them for where I am. So with the RSH, so RSH is repeat sprint hypoxia. So we got an altitude chamber in 2013, And there was a bit of research on sort of repeat sprint ability with team sports, how important it is, and hypoxia with it. So there's more people that were getting sort of altitude chambers and working out how to do it. There's a few lab tests on it. So Beardy was doing his PhD environmental factors, and one of my keen interests is sort of the environmental factors of physiology of S&C. So I was lucky enough, I did quite a lot and ran a lot of studies for them. So the main thing we wanted to do is how we could use RSH or any type of altitude training within a campaign, because as you know, with professional rugby training, it's very high, lots of time constraints. So we wanted to work out a protocol that was really small in time, so it wouldn't actually add to much time load, and we couldn't replace anything. So you can't replace weights, you can't replace rugby training at all. So we couldn't add any additional running load to it, and we couldn't have that much time. So that was the main purpose of it. It was how we logistically use RSH in the protocol. So we designed a bike test, really. So to start off, we did a threshold bike test that I designed with Gregoire Millet. So he's a professor at the University of Lausanne, and he's sort of like the new altitude guru on sort of altitude methodologies, from hematological stuff to repeat sprint ability. So he luckily worked with us for the project. So we did a bike test. We did a threshold test. So we did just a standard repeat sprint, like 7 seconds on, 23 seconds off, and we recorded the mean power output of the first reps. I mean, we wanted to make that high, so we did a 7-second effort, 4 minutes off, 7-second effort, 4 minutes off, and made sure that those two, the average of them, to make them high. Then we started our protocol, and we did 7 seconds on, 23 seconds off, and recorded the main variable was mean power output. And then the guys kept on going until their mean power output of the rep fell below 80% of their first rep marker. So say if they got 1,000 watts on their first rep, if they went below 800, that counted as one that they fell below. And if they fell below on 2 consecutive occasions, you stop the test. For example, rep 3, they went 750. Rep 4, they went 750, would stop. But if they went rep 3, 750, rep 4, 810, they would reset again. So it's 2 consecutive ones. Then we'd stop the test. They did, and then used all the variables. We bought some loader bikes, which are pretty high-end ones, and so they can check out every variable, work done, all power outputs, etc., etc. We also did blood lactates as well, so before, pre, post. I think it was 3, 5, and 8 minutes post-test, and then we took those tests. So we did that for the whole squad, and then we had 2 different groups. So we had repeat sprint hypoxia RSH group, and then a normoxia group. So we split it forwards and backs. So the forwards did hypoxia, so they were in the altitude room at 3,000 meters, which is about 13 to 14% oxygen. And the backs were in normoxia, so normal conditions, but they thought it was at hypoxia. So we turned the altitude on but set to 0, so the fans were still going, which is pretty cool. And then we did they all did exactly the same training. So they did 4 sessions, and they were early morning, so it was about 7:30 before breakfast. And each session consisted of 3 sets, and each set was 6 seconds on, 18 seconds off, times by 6. So really short. So the entire session was 12 minutes, including the warm-up. And the key with it is that they had to go maximal every rep. So it's a traditional repeat sprint protocol, really. And we did that over about 10 days. Then we repeated the tests, and then we wanted to see how much obviously, because it's training, both of them would have improved. We want to see how much improved compared to the normoxia. So with the test, the hypoxia group improved their max power 9% more than the normoxia group. Min power was 10% more. Mean power, which is the most important one, was 8% more. But the reps to completion, so before failure, didn't actually improve any more than the normoxia group. So we came to the conclusion that the RSH with bike, it didn't actually increase the reps to failure, but it improved the work done in that time period. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, an 80-minute match, it's always going to be the same, but the work you can do in that 18-minute match improved a hell of a lot. So that was really significant. So when you're talking about sort of elite rugby players, you're getting 8, 10, 9% increases. That's huge. Yeah. So we've used that as a protocol sort of ever since. So the first week we go into camp, we need to raise intensity of training because it's just a higher intensity of training, higher intensity of match play internationally compared to regionally. So the first week we do that. We do 4 sessions or hour sets on the bike to help bridge that gap, and it doesn't increase their running load, acute, chronic, all that stuff, but it helps get that intensity into their system. So we also we did another paper as well, so it's all been published now. It'll be Beard et al. And we did upper body, so we did exact same protocols, exact same test, but with upper body ski erg. And then the results were the hypoxic group increased their max power 11% more than the normoxic group, min power 15, mean power 11%, and then the total work they did was 20% more than the normoxic group. And the reps completed, they actually did 8% more reps completed, the improvement. So it had a bigger effect on your upper body muscles than your lower body muscles. And my thinking is on that is that they're smaller muscles, so triceps are smaller than your quads, so they're more fatigue resistant, they'll fatigue quicker, so it had a greater effect on it. So that was really interesting actually. And what the theory is behind it is it goes into huge molecular detail, but from what I know is that when you go maximally in hypoxia, there's a selective vasodilation to your fast twitch muscle fibers compared to the normoxia. So basically, obviously we all know your fast twitch muscle fibers have greater power, but they fatigue very quickly, so they maintain that high power for longer. So it means you can maintain a high amount of power for a longer time.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, even obviously a lot of our listeners won't have access to an altitude chamber, but just the way logistically you put that into the program to increase that high intensity or repeat sprint ability, the adaptations, without adding to the load of the amount they're doing rugby technically, tactically, as well. That's really interesting. I had a podcast recently with David Bishop, and he's talking about a lot of times we try and integrate stuff into rugby training, and then you don't actually get the adaptation you want from a physiological point of view, whereas this is a perfect way of kind of getting that. And obviously if you can do it hypoxic in hypoxia, then even better. It's really interesting.
Yeah, there's actually some stuff out there now, like, for people that don't. We're very lucky because we have an altitude chamber of resources, but people don't actually this stuff. It's called hypoventilatory training. So basically, you're causing hypoxia when in normal conditions, but it sounds really crude, but it's basically holding your breath. Okay. When repeat sprints. So I'm looking into that now. There's been a bit of research in the past couple of years on it. Some on rugby as well. So some in Toulon. So Bobby Paul Stridgen did some work with his PhD student when he was in Toulon there, and it's decent results. So I'm looking into that now of how we can actually do that. When you do a set conditioning on the pitch after, how can we improve that by getting a hypoxic response? So if people are interested who don't have the resources, that may be a way of sort of thinking about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And moving on, I know you've done training camps in Europe at altitude. What have your experience been of that, and how have you used that?
Right, yeah, we were really lucky as well. So for our World Cup camp, we did it 15 and 19. We again, from the advice of Gregoire Miller as well. There's traditional hypoxic training, which is going on an altitude camp, and then there's obviously the new stuff, which is peripheral RS8. So for the traditional stuff, we did live high, train low camp. Yeah. So basically, we went to a ski resort in Switzerland, and it was perfect really for us. So we lived high, so it was at 2,300 meters, which is just high altitude from the definition. And then we lived in the ski chalets, ski resorts there, and then we went down the gondola to 1,100 meters, so low altitude to medium altitude. And there's actually a football pitch right at the bottom of the gondola. So this time around in a sort of tennis centre, it's like a children's. So we had a gym by the pitch in the tennis centre. So we took our old gym in Wales and we put it on an Arctic lorry and transported it all the way to Switzerland. Mental, like I was sort of leading that with doing all that, and it was mental. It's amazing how hard it is. Like half the job in S&C is sort of logistics rather than actually S&C. But that was pretty cool. gym over there in training centre. So the benefits of it is that for every 1%, for every 100 hours you stay at sort of high altitude, you get 1% increase in hemoglobin mass. So they say in the research you need to be there for 14 days to get decent benefits. It's like 3-4%. It's very hard to measure it because it's quite expensive testing. So unfortunately, we didn't do it. But we were there for 14 days, and you live high, but you train low because you can get the training intensity that you need for training. Yes, we were there for 14 days. That was sort of start of our overload camps. We worked them hard, but we think our aim of it was to get a big aerobic base. So then when we go into the next phase of our training, this big sort of catalyst or springboard, so guys can train at higher training intensity, so they can get a greater sort of anaerobic adaptations, all the other adaptations that you do in periodizations for a pre-season. Work really well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the fact that you can still train at intensity at the lower altitude. I've been on camps before where it's been live high, train high, and it's intense, but in the other sense of intensity, not in terms of training maximally. It's just it's a slog. You can't keep those high intensities up, but it feels intense while you're doing as experience. Walking up the stairs is tough enough at altitude. So.
But you would obviously you want to stay there for as long as possible, but you always got to think sport specific. Like if you're doing say marathon running and stuff, you can go high, train high because that's intensity. But with rugby, when you're doing like repeat sprints and stuff, you just can't get that. Yeah,
and I think a lot of the research does suggest that live high, train low is more effective, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's some cool stuff out there as well. Again, very lucky with Gregor and Millet. The new thing now is live high, train low plus high. So you combine everything. So you live high, but you train low most of the time, and then you do some repeat sprint hypoxia as well to sort of top it up to get that. So you can get peripheral and sort of central adaptations. Yeah. So there's some really cool stuff going on with sort of altitude training at the moment, of like combinations of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Now, we're talking about kind of training camps as well. I know Wales is one of the first people to use cryotherapy. Going over to Spala in Poland, and you've got your own cryo chamber at the Vale in Wales as well. What's been your experience of using it, and what sort of benefits have you seen?
Well, we've had cryo now for 2012 or 2013. So cryo, a bit of background. Cryo was actually started in the 60s in Poland, and sort of they're mad over there. They use it for the health benefits. So people would actually go on holiday to a cryo centre and have cryotherapy, like just average Joes, general people like me and you, and they would go there for the health benefits. There's lots of stuff on cancer, arthritis, depression, ME, MS, etc., etc. But Ireland started to use it in the early 2000s for sport, and then Wasps used it under Gats and Craig Wyatt and Bobby. That's where I sort of got sort of understanding of it. And then we went to our camps 2011 World Cup to Spala. So these are sort of big they were Olympic training camps, sort of state-funded training camps in Poland. And there's basically middle of nowhere. All they have is a gym, a pitch, and a cryo chamber. So you go in there. So we wanted to bring it over. So luckily we got cryo chamber 2013, as I said. And it's worked really well, actually. We've had it a long time. Because we've had a long time, we have a pretty good understanding of how it works and what you need to do to get the benefits that you want from it, because there's not actually that much research in sport. You probably know as well, Jamie, there's not much research on the effects of cryotherapy on sport, and it's one of those things like ice baths and general recovery stuff. There's lots of sort of like different views on it. So we use it. We've done a bit of internal research on it as well. Like we use the sevens, and we did a bit of internal research on sort of how cryotherapy affects the subsequent day's performance compared to usual, and it came up with some pretty decent sort of results. But a lot of our stuff is anecdotal, and we're trying to work on that by getting some sort of more research, clinical research into it. But I break up into the two ways we think it's. Obviously, with recovery, you want to make guys as fresh as possible. So in test weeks, for example, if we were playing Saturday to Saturday, we would use it. Sunday morning, they would do cryo. On Monday, they would have it. They would have compulsory in the morning, and then the afternoon they would have an option. They could either do an ice bath or cryo. Tuesday would be the same, so on the big double day, have to do it in the morning, and then it's optional to do it in the afternoon. Wednesday will be off, like our day off. Thursday they'll do it twice, option to do it up to twice again. Friday they'll do it once after their team run, and then there's some, and then we offer it at night time as well. So about 6-7 o'clock after dinner, some guys have it, and there's a bit of research on it. It helps out sleep. So it's a big parasympathetic drive. So, for example, Mo Farah used it for the 2012 or 16 Olympics. So we did that. And then Saturday, so game day, we actually sort of introduced this. We thought about it a few years ago, and it works quite well. So we do it 4 hours before a game. There's a big sympathetic rush, so we put it down as cold as it can, so minus 160. And guys just go in there for 1 minute. And it's a big sympathetic drive. And basically, it wakes them up. Like, say if they've had a sleep last night, I don't think I sort of guarantee anyone who won't be waking up by going in sort of a freezer for 1 minute, minus 160, and it works really well. So that's the basic. And you know, the theory of it is exactly the same as an ice bath and stuff. Like there's other benefits to it, like hormonal benefits, the long term effect of it as well. And it's more central than an ice bath, where an ice bath is more sort of localized to the muscle area. So we periodize it quite a lot. So, you know, just thinking of it, if it's a contact session with rugby, players seem to like an ice bath more because it's the feeling actually on the muscle and the bones. Whereas if it's other sessions, they go sort of cryotherapy. So that's why we want them to do it at least once a day, but then we give it an option after, because there's a big thing with rugby players, you know, the novelty factor. Like if they're getting in there for our Six Nations 8 weeks, twice a day, 5 or 6 days a week, they're just going to get bored from it, and there won't be much compliance. So we try and give them a bit of ownership of it.
Yeah, definitely. You've got to take into account the kind of individual preferences as well and stuff like that. So it sounds really good, and also fascinating that it's depending on how you use it, can be parasympathetic stimulus or sympathetic stimulus. So it's interesting.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff as well. So the biggest thing with me as well, one of my things is the overuse of recovery modalities for in rugby or general sports. So sort of people don't really periodise it. So obviously when you want to be fresh, like in test weeks, you have to use it. But pre-season, it's doing the opposite to what you want. So like people doing ice baths in pre-season, like you don't want the adaptations blunted. You actually want to use it. So I think the importance of periodising recovery, of when you put it in, when you put it out, is really important, because if you just use it all the time, you're going to blunt the adaptations, so no one's going to improve as much, and B, it's going to reduce the actual benefit of doing it yourself. So if you hold off at some points, you'll get as the biggest effect of, say, cryotherapy or recovery modality when you actually need it the most.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing as well. So the only exception to that, we use it in pre-season during overload camps. So, for example, when you go to an overload camp, like when we went to Switzerland or Turkey, or when we went to Spa before, Switzerland didn't have cryotherapy, but Turkey did, and Poland did. So the benefit of that is that we use the cryo to allow the players to tolerate the increased workload. So if you're doing, for example, they usually do 2 or 3 sessions a day, including weights. If they're going up to 5 sessions a day for 10 days, something like that, they're not going to be able to cope with it. So the cryotherapy allows them to tolerate that. And then the important thing with this is then to get the adaptations, they need to have a block of downtime then. So say, 5 days off, 10 days off without any recovery. So it sort of just delays the adaptations, and it comes in one big chunk when they rest.
Yeah, you preempted my next question, because that was it. Obviously, you said inflammation is the kind of stimulus to adapt. So if you overusing recovery modalities, then you don't get that adaptation. But I'd heard about these camps where you do extreme volumes. I guess my next question would be, in terms of periodizing it, at what point do you do that? Is that kind of middle of pre-season, or do you do that first to really spike the load and then sort of build up again after?
Yeah, people would have their own opinions on it, but what we did was, so our pre-season, for example, 2019, we had 4 weeks at the Vale, which is our base, and it was basically getting ready for Switzerland, and we did no recovery whatsoever. So that was to bulletproof them for Switzerland, which was a sort of increase in the load. And then when we went to Switzerland, there wasn't any recovery facilities there, so there wasn't an ice bath. There was a freezing cold river that was coming down from the mountain. There was a bit of a swimming pool, it was a caravan park that we used every so often, but we didn't do any main recovery modalities because we wanted that adaptation. Then we had a week off, and then we went into our pre-season first 2 pre-season matches. So that's when we wanted to use the recovery. So what we did was, because this was the beginning of August, and we weren't going to Japan until we actually wanted the guys that were playing. We needed them fresh for the games, but we knew that they were coming into there in a sort of like a not high preparedness state. But we knew that, and the coaches were happy with that. So we let the recovery until the Thursday or Friday of test week. So we wanted to get the biggest adaptations. And then when we went to Turkey, that was sort of our big overload camp with heat that we'll chat about later. But then we used the cryotherapy then so then they could cope. And then after that, we're in the last 2 sort of warm-up games, and then we just smashed the recovery because that was our performance zone. So we're still doing conditioning, but we wanted to make sure that the guys were prepped for the warm-up games because it's obviously a big thing on selection as well. And then obviously when we were at the World Cup, we went full performance mode.
Yeah. I mean, you just kind of sparked the question there in terms of, saying some of the players would be going into the games not fully prepared, so there's some not overtraining or overreaching, perhaps a better word for it, and the coaches are happy for that. That must be great from your point of view, having coaches that are happy to realise there's times of the year where we can really push the boat a little bit, and then we can ease off at times when we need it. So firstly, how do you get coaches to buy into that, and then how is it easy to kind of deal with? I guess players as well to a certain degree, because you said some of them want to be in good shape to be able to compete for their position, their jersey.
Yeah, but it's the biggest thing, as you know, you can be the best S&C coach in the world, but if your coach doesn't sort of isn't a proponent of S&C and physical performance, it's very hard to get in. But I've been with all the people that I've worked with, the coaches, Wasps, and then Gats with Wales, and now Wayne Pivac, they're really big proponents, so it makes it a hell of a lot easier. So I think with international rugby, it's a lot easier because obviously the pre-season's a finite period of time, and you're peaking for September, October. You're not going for the whole year, which is it's a tough gig in the club environment because it's as you would know, mate, like me, it's a long old slog. Yeah. The whole season. So with international rugby, it's a bit easier. And we said to the coaches, like, because they know the importance of fitness and physical preparedness, they knew we explained to them like how long we're out in August to September, like it was 6 weeks from those games. So they understood that they weren't going to come in, and it was part of the process because you don't want to, with international rugby, you've got specific points to peak for. So you don't want to peak in August because then by the time when it actually matters, you're not going to be at your highest performance. So with the players as well, I'm a big proponent as well, and I've learned it from sort of a lot of people I've worked with, is that just explain to the guys what you're doing. So that most rugby players are really intelligent guys, and they actually like to know that you put thinking and research into what you're doing it. So we did a presentation sort of our plan of periodization and say, look, this is what we're doing it, this is why we're doing it with our recovery. And once most of them obviously knew it anyway, but once everyone knew the plan, why they're doing it, they all bought into it.
Yeah, that's cool. Now we've spoken about altitude, cryotherapy. What kind of other interventions do you guys use, just trying to find that edge?
Well, the biggest one, it sounds a cliche really, is just working hard. I know everyone says it as well, but it's come from sort of the coaches. So Gats, Wayne, all the way down to the heads of the department, to all the conditioners. With Wales, there's a big ethos of working hard, and you can't escape that. If you don't work hard, it doesn't matter if you have all the edges and things like that. You're not going to do well. So that's a big ethos is who are you working harder than the other team. So they have a big ethos of working hard on your off weeks, so the fallow weeks, so the games in Six Nations where we don't have the weeks where we don't have matches, we work hard then. It's a big ethos, and I think that's the most important thing. We've also some other interventions. So from an environmental point of view, hot baths is we've been using recently. So there's quite a lot of research on it from Neil Welsh. I think he's at Liverpool Uni now. He used to be at Bangor, on hot baths and improving sort of your fitness passively. And it improves your fitness for hot conditions, but also for normal conditions as well. So, clubs in the UK could use it as well when it's freezing.
Anything on saunas as well? I know I'm guessing a similar sort of mechanism.
On what again, sorry?
Saunas,
yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same. Hot baths are a bit more extreme and better because it sort of fully covers you as well from a humidity point of view. But basically, say you do a training session and your core temp rises when you train, and then it goes down again when you stop training. If you jump in a hot bath straight after, it maintains that core temperature rise. And there's lots of aerobic benefits to that as well, because obviously you're having a more efficient system, you're less likely to get to that critical core temperature, etc. But there's some stuff on with triathletes and long distance running that actually improves their sort of 10k marathon times of that. So, and it's an easy win because it's a form of recovery. Guys like going in a sauna, so we bought the late inflatable lazy spas, and we used Six Nations 19. So we were going to use it for the World Cup for a slightly different reason that we'll chat about later. But the guys got in, they loved it, they're just chatting in the jacuzzi. It has to be up to your neck and it has to be hot. They have to be like sweating and struggling. But there's lots of research on improves your general fitness as well. So that's one of the new things, environmental things that we've come on sort of in the past couple of years.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And like I say, it sounds similar to what I've seen in saunas and stuff like that with endurance athletes jumping straight in after their session, and like I say, passively still getting a stimulus of adaptation. So that's cool. Now, this question we ask all the guests on the podcast, and it's: what do you think is the biggest mistake rugby players make when it comes to strength and conditioning? And you can obviously look at that internationally, or from experience at club level as well.
I think the biggest mistake probably is that people think too far ahead, so they try and fix like the 1%ers first, rather than actually thinking that the main thing, like the big rocks first. So if you don't have your foundations there, it doesn't matter if you have the 1%ers or not. So is their body comp right for their position? So is their body fat down enough? Is their muscle mass high enough? Are they strong? Are they fit for their position? It's very simple, but if you think about, your speed, your agility, your movement skills, all this stuff, but you don't have the fundamentals, you're not going to be an elite athlete. So you need to get the basic stuff wrong, your strength, your body comp, your fitness right before anything else. Yeah.
No, I definitely see that a lot. And I think it's because, like you say, the speed, agility, power stuff, that's all the kind of sexy stuff. Sometimes it's boring to work on body comp and things like that, but you're definitely right. Now, we've kind of talked a lot about camps already, but I imagine that's the best time for an international S&C is a camp building up to a World Cup. So what, other than those different interventions we've spoken about, what kind of approaches do you guys take to get the players in the best shape for the World Cup?
Yeah, it's the best time for national. So obviously it's every 4 years and stuff, and we you sort of live and die for it really, because it's the big thing where you're holding like Six Nations is a long time. The World Cup, you get them doing the World Cup, we're there from May till November. So what's that? 6 months. So it's a long old time. So you love it. So the biggest thing that we started off, like we chatted about, was we wanted to get some quality in to start off with. So we had a big emphasis in the first sort of 4 weeks, like most teams do doing periodization, is the quality and muscle mass as well. So we did a lot of speed stuff. We did a bit of endurance, but not a huge amount really. We just wanted the biggest chance to get their speed improved, their strength and power improved, and get some muscle mass on them as well. So we always had, with our gym work as well, hypertrophy at the end, because muscle mass is so important. But we had sort of the main emphasis at the start, typical block periodization, start with higher reps and then move to strength power stuff as well. But we had a big emphasis on that to start off with, and then we sort of slowly introduced more sort of endurance work, some aerobic work, anaerobic, So then we had, like we said, we had the Live High Train Low camp in Switzerland. We had a week off after that, and during that camp we were doing lots of rugby stuff, so games as conditioning tools. We did some VIFT, so based off 30-15, mass running, did anaerobic stuff as well. So it was all together, but we had sort of a general theme where it was a bit more aerobic, a bit more anaerobic, but we did everything together as well. I think that's a big thing because rugby is so mixed in its sort of variables as well. It's hard to do proper block periodisation, so you're going to have an aerobic block, an anaerobic block, that type of stuff. Because it's so mixed, we had that rugby theme going throughout. And then when we went to Turkey, we had our games and stuff. We were still working hard, so we introduced the RSH into that as well. So we had a big transfer from our aerobic base, like we mentioned, from the altitude camp, and then that was all central. But we wanted to get peripheral adaptations as well, so that's when we introduced the RSH. That we then we went to Turkey. That was in between our 4 World Cup camps. So we went 2 warm-up games, Turkey camp, 2 warm-up games. So that's when it was just pure rugby. So a lot of stuff, but we had conditioning blocks in there as well. But it was more anaerobic rugby related stuff, so contact stuff, watts, repeat sprints, that type of stuff. It was sort of went away from the mass after. And 2 weeks. 2 weeks basically from when we got back to Turkey to when we left the World Cup, and that was pretty important because it was honing in. So with heat training, which is we've used quite a lot with Turkey, so that was 38 degrees when we were there, and the heat is so powerful. I don't know if you've sort of done heat camps or not, Jamie, but it's amazing how quickly guys adapt to it. And we were there for 8 days. We got the benefits, but you lose heat adaptations very quickly, as quick as you actually get them. So basically, when we got back from Turkey, we had 2.5 weeks till we left to Japan. If we didn't do any heat top-ups, we would have lost all the benefits for acclimation. So probably the most important phase was actually for us was that period there where we did heat top-ups. So that's when we used like hot baths, like we said. We did the heat. Bags and the old school boxing stuff like sweatsuits, bin bags underneath their top, maintain their heat acclimation. So when they got to Japan, the benefits that we were working on were still maintained. Yeah. And there's a lot of research out there that these top ups, it doesn't just maintain it, actually improves it.
Okay.
So that was really important. I don't know if that answers the question. There's obviously a lot of information there.
Oh no, definitely. It just kind of shows the whole philosophy of it in terms of you've got various interventions trying to improve things, but also you've got that rugby element the whole way through. But then also it's kind of periodised in an approach. It just sounds very kind of well thought out and covering all the bases. And like you say, you can't do rugby's one of those sports. It's so difficult to do that strict block periodisation because there's so many demands, from the game that you've got to cover everything. And even if you're not focusing on something, they'll be doing it in a rugby session, somehow, even if it's not planned.
Well, you can have general themes of stuff. Like for example, in Switzerland we had a day where we did sort of games and multi-directional stuff. Another day where we did sort of aerobic mass running stuff. Another day where we did like our contact conditioning, but it was all around integrated with games or rugby or something like that. Yeah. And it's a big thing that sort of coaches want to do, and one of our philosophies is everything's integrated. So we would do a block of conditioning into rugby, block conditioning into rugby, etc., because you want to get that fatigue. So guys cognitively think when they're fatigued in rugby situations, because I think with sort of conditions as well, sometimes people's egos get away with it. You're not getting them the fittest team in the world just to be fit. You're getting them to be fit at rugby.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Like it's like a gym as well. Like we're not training powerlifters or Olympic lifters. We're training rugby players. Like our ego thing is obviously it's important to get decent clean scores, different stuff, but is it actually benefiting their rugby? Yeah. We need to think like if it is, that's happy days. Really improve that. But for example, if it's affecting their rugby performance, or whatever, you need to take your ego away.
Yeah, very good point. Now you mentioned, like I said, in the early stage, big emphasis on improving speed, and I know you've worked a lot with Franz Bosch and incorporate a lot of his approaching to that. What have been the keys to success for your players?
Well, luckily I've worked with him for 10 years now, so he sort of started with Wales at a similar time to me. Adam Beard sort of got him in initially, and a lot of his stuff's out there, and it took me a while because it's pretty complicated stuff. It took me a while to sort of get my head around it, but basically the way I think about it is like his motor learning theory. The premise of it is that your body is really clever and it can cope to different situations. So you want to strain that. It's the old attractor and fluctuators theory. So you need to embed the attractors, so the good sort of positions, points, movements, so then it can adapt, your body can adapt to any situation that changes, and it goes straight to the attractors. So example with running, if you want like a good knee drive where your heels to your bum, your knees pointing forward, you do that exercise. So the maintain, you always keep that knee drive in certain exercises, but you change all the constructs of the exercise to different. So, for example, if he's running, he may be fatigued in one leg, he may be holding something, an unbalanced weight, but you always go to that attractor state, so that heel to bum. So then in any situation, it transfers to rugby. In any situation in rugby, you'll always find that position. And that's his main premise from what I take of it as well. I could be completely wrong. Like it could be something, he could mean it's something totally different. That's how I take it as. And once I got my head around that as well, we really did some cool stuff. So he's one of the best speed coaches and movement coaches I've worked with, and it took a long time for us to sort of utilise him the most. And sort of it was everyone had a viewpoint. So Franz had a viewpoint. We all worked together and how to do it. And 19, like the World Cup, was probably the best we had it. So because his exercises, they're quite demanding, as in the volume of sort of contacts that they do, the high neuromuscular load as well. You have to be really careful with that. So we got to the point of sort of the little than often technique. So, for example, he did individual analysis for every player in our squad, in our radar as well. So say it was for World Cup, it was 42 players, I think. And then in our gym sessions, we wanted to get him in, but we didn't want to have a big chunk of time where they were just doing that all the time, because they just couldn't tolerate the volume and just go. We wanted little and often, so we did his exercises as supersetted exercises in the gym. So, for example, a typical lower body session where they're doing their double leg, superset that with one of his exercises that was individually prescribed for the player. So each player would have 4 or 5 I took from Franz's analysis to work on. So it could be from one player, top speed stuff, upper body, lower body disassociation, whatever it is, a rugby related one. They're 5 exercises, and then in their 6 exercises, so they do their double leg power, they may superset that with one of the exercises. The double leg strength, they may just by itself. And then a single leg strength and posterior chain work, they may have another superset exercise. And it meant that in the world, in 6 exercises in the world, so they could just concentrate on one thing. And they executed it a lot better, because then you had to concentrate on one thing and the stimulus wasn't too much. And then what we also did with the sort of the fast boys, so sort of back 3 boys as well, if a session was, say, an hour long you had for a weight session, we would have it where it'd be like a 40-minute session, but then he could take certain players up 10 minutes at a time to work on some like more advanced stuff, and that worked really well because he likes to have individual. The best how Franz works is he wouldn't mind me saying this, is when he works with an individual, it's most effective. So with the fast boys, George Knorr, Liam Williams, Stephen Davis, etc. Those guys would go out for 10 minutes to do well. We could manage it. The big thing was little and often, and we also did that in our unit sessions as well. So we did some good stuff on sort of the specifics you need for certain rugby activities like driving, catch passing, etc. like that. So we had like small segments in the session as well. So to be fair to Bobby, he programmed that really well.
That's cool. It's really interesting. It's something I've kind of maybe over the years changed a bit, because when you learn everything originally in S&C, it's always look at the perfect anatomical position and technique and everything, which obviously there's a reason for that, but also kind of seen that, especially in sport, and rugby is a great example, you get in positions that are nowhere near that perfect position, so you need to know how to come out. So I'm guessing that's kind of similar philosophy. They put you in I guess, exercises that are trying to pull you out of that perfect position, but you're constantly drilling that perfect technique. Was that similar kind of philosophy?
That's bang on. So, like, for example, one of his sort of simple exercises is lockout. So it works on sort of getting you in the acceleration position. So you do like a lockout. You lean and you lean onto a wall, move into a lockout position where you do various things to try your best to get them out of it. For example, they may use like an aqua bag so they're unbalanced, or they may step further away from the wall to start off with, so then it's really hard to get into that lockout position. Or they may move a plate as soon as they do it, so they're sort of your centre of mass moves. So the theory of it is basically do exercises to try and get that position, but they work on getting that position, whatever it is. So when you move into rugby, like you said, when they're in like a terrible position, or they've just got up and they go into a sprint, they get into that optimal position as quickly as possible.
Yeah. No, it's interesting stuff. I don't think it'd be offended if you say, he works better one-on-one. I think when you're working on something like, running mechanics as well, if you've got a group of players, it's so hard to do because everyone's so different, aren't they?
It's tough. We did it as well. You find you have to do that at some point. So I take sort of the big group stuff. So if you're working with 10 players or whatever, and then it freed up Franz to do some very advanced stuff with sort of specific boys. So luckily I've learned a lot from him, and I can implement stuff and have my own ideas, but then we used to free him up to do sort of what he's paid for, sort of the individual high-end stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. Right, let's move on to your experiences on the Lions tours. Obviously, it's again once every 4 years, highlight of a lot of players' careers, and also that challenge of bringing different nationalities together and guys who normally knocking chunks out of each other. What were the experiences on the Lions tours?
It was amazing, really. I was really lucky to go on it in 17 to New Zealand. So luckily, Bobby sort of asked if I wanted to come. And the biggest thing, sort of the challenges, there were quite a few sort of logistical challenges because we played 10 games in 5.5 weeks in New Zealand, and the biggest start-off challenge is that we were flying. The first game against the Barbarians was the week after all the finals, and we landed on the Wednesday, and that game was on the Saturday. So you would think about all the research or the prep that would be for jet lag, isn't it? It's an hour a day for every hour time zone difference. So we were getting there ridiculously early, so that was a big challenge. How we did, so we just went on full recovery mode, and the coaches, basically the guys that went to the finals, didn't play that game whatsoever. So we went there, we landed on the Wednesday, we did recovery straight away, and it's amazing. The biggest thing I found from it was how we underestimate the capability of players. Like, you have all this thing about the research, they can't do stuff 2 days after, or preparation as well. The Lions sort of is so demanding. Like, some players were playing 380 minutes in 10 days and they just got on with it. Obviously it wasn't ideal, but they still performed exceptionally well. So that was the biggest thing I got, was sort of how we underestimate sort of players' capabilities. It was mad, it was impressive. It was so impressive, some of the guys getting up for it. But the biggest thing, one of the other things as well, was sort of bringing the Four Nations together is just, you need sort of great motivators as well, bringing people to have a laugh, and that's one of Bobby's sort of strengths as well. He's such a great motivator and bringing people together. And that was a big thing I learned as well, is just sort of the sort of morale side of it as well. So half our jobs was sort of keeping upbeat, keeping everyone happy in the gym, keeping them motivated. It's a long old tour, and obviously you've got selection going on. Everyone doesn't know each other really well, so keeping everyone motivated as well. That was a big thing that I learned from that, is the importance of morale.
Yeah, definitely. That's something you always hear about Bobby, is that he's an expert at morale and figuring people out and keeping them enthused and everything. So it's it must be great to work with him.
Yeah, he's a great guy. like I said, I was with my internships. I was there. I've knew him since 2007. So he's a good mate, really, really good, and excellent at his job.
Yeah. Again, this is another question we ask all the guests on the podcast: is what advice would you give to an upcoming strength coach?
I would say, only on my experience as well, I could be completely wrong, but sort of when you're up and coming strength coach, the biggest thing that sort of strength conditioning coaches like to see is a work ethic. So just work your nuts off, basically. Work as hard. All the jobs that they give you, although they think that you may think that it's like menial or anything like that, just do it to the best of your ability. Make sure it's done, and if believe me, if you do them well and stuff, they'll give you a lot more responsibility much quicker. Everyone goes through the internship route to get into strength and conditioning with elite sport. If you're not an elite player, it's just sort of the nature of the beast, really. So everyone's been through the pathways, like the top guys. But if you work hard, you'll get credited with giving more and more responsibility. And one thing that sort of Craig White told me as well is just take lots of notes as well. So I used to sort of take loads of notes of what people were doing, different sessions and stuff, and then it sort of lets you form your own sort of philosophy as well, because you don't want to be just a yes man where you do everything and you chop and change as well. It takes time. To be honest, I've only just sort of developed a sort of philosophy in the past couple of years of what I want, and I think that's really important. And I think take notes, and I think the other thing as well is have a bit of empathy for the players to try and do some of their training. So when I was younger, I tried to do sort of what the players did, so their weight sessions, that type of stuff. So you have a bit of empathy to see how you feel. Like you don't have to do the same weight as them or anything like that, but players appreciate you feeling it and actually training yourself, because it's like, as you know, sort of rugby performance or specific sport performance is a lot different to what you do in a normal gym.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really big one. Like, you know, one of my old bosses used to do basically the same gym program as the guys are doing, and he'd be like, if I'm completely fucked, then they're definitely going to be completely fucked. You know, you've got to, you know, maybe something needs to change because they're actually doing the rugby training as well. So it just gives you that little insight into what they're going through as well.
As well, when a player asks you and you do an off-peak conditioning session, it's absolutely savage. If you when you're younger as well, if you do it with them, or if you do it with them as well, it gives you a bit of credibility, because it shows that you're willing to put a bit of a bit of effort in for them as well. And you're not going to be doing the same power as them, for example, like squatting wise. I'm weak as piss. I'm not going to do the same amount of weight as most rugby players, but it gives you a bit of appreciation to know that they know you're actually doing it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And on the same sort of thread, what are there any books or resources you recommend to young coaches?
The one that I did when I was sort of growing up was the Scientific Principles of Training, of Strength Training. But I think with sort of obviously all this lockdown happening and stuff, like there's a big, as we were chatting out before air and stuff, like there's loads of webinars, loads of podcasts, that type of stuff like this one. So many resources nowadays. Just keep on learning that, and keep up to date with research. Really, like I do a Google Scholar sort of alert on set things like resistance training, hypoxia, cryotherapy, whatever you're interested in. That's quite a cool thing to do that someone advised me to do, and I've used that for a few years. But I think just podcast stuff like that. Try and get your qualifications as well. Like a lot of people need when you're up and coming, they look for masters now. Like I did my masters at Edith Cowan. People look for that nowadays. So try and get your sort of qualifications early on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, most like internship applications, I see that, you know, a big heap of them have already got masters. So it's just, you know, it's the nature of the beast. You need to get that level of education now. So I know we're running out of time. So just to finish up, where can people learn more about you?
Well, I'm a bit of a recluse on social media. Sort of a voyeur on Twitter. I've only just sort of gotten into it, so I don't really put anything. But my happy. It's John Ashby 18, all one word. But happy for people to message me as well. Sort of start conversations, have a chat, different ideas as well. And then my email is John Ashby at live.co.uk. So happy to chat with people. I can get some new. We can share some ideas. I definitely 100% don't know everything as well, so it'll be really good to get sort of ideas and viewpoints from different people as well.
That's great, and of course we'll share those in the show notes. But lastly, thanks, John. It's been great chatting to you. Some really good insights into an international camp preparing for World Cup. Lions tours. It's been, and some of the research you're doing as well, which is great. You're in a really good environment now, and you can see there's a lot of thought process behind what you're doing with those guys, and it's no surprise that they perform well. So thanks for sharing that with us today.
No worries, anytime.
Yes, thank you, John. Some great information there, so thank you for sharing that with us, and all the best for the future. Hopefully we hear about some international rugby soon. Guys, please subscribe to us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, Spotify, whatever you use for your podcasts, and of course give us a 5-star review. We do appreciate all the help and reviews and sharing it with your friends. And of course, check us out at rugbyrenegade.com. Tons of cool things happening there. We're trying to rebuild the site, so keep an eye peeled for that. That should be happening any day now. And of course, keep checking us out on social media. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. For more quality rugby strength and conditioning information, check us out at rugbyrenegade.com. Rugby Renegade, building machines.